Hey guys, let's talk about last night's episode of Almost Human, which I enjoyed. I will say right off the top that when I did my review of the pilot episode, I kept calling John Kennick's Carl Urban, and that is the actor who is playing that role. So, my bad, sorry, I will try not to make that mistake again. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the second episode was the connection that is starting to develop between Kennex and Dorian. They had some wonderful exchanges between the two of them in the car, and scenes that they had together I thought were, kind of intimate, and they were revealing some things about one another, which I thought were great. We got to see another emotional side from Dorian, which is one of the reasons why this model of the synthetic was taken off the market because they felt that they were too emotional. And there was some really wonderful scenes with Dorian and Vanessa, the sex bot, and even some scenes when he found out that the sex bot had to be put down. Some really great moments, and you really saw Dorian connecting with Kennex and letting him know that, listen, you can't talk to these androids, these synthetics, the way you would talk to a human. You have to relate to them in different ways. And watching Dorian teach Kennex this, and Kennex actually taking it in, was great to see. And there were some pretty funny moments too. And Kennex, we all know his ex-girlfriend was the one who set him up in the pilot episode when his entire team was wiped out. And obviously he hasn't dated, he hasn't moved on. And Dorian tells him he set up like this profile for him, a dating profile, which is kind of funny. And he tells him he knows he did like a scan, and he knows that he's got a high testicle count, that he needs to release some of this. It was all pretty funny. And I mean, a little bit out of left field, but hilarious nonetheless. And I thought that was a great moment at the opening of the episode when these kids go up to Dorian and they're like, oh my God, like, you're so cool. Let me see what you can do. And he shows them the side of his face, and like this whole scan thing comes up the side of his face. And then they're like, then the kids ask Kennex, like, are you an android too? And he's like, no, I'm human. They're like, oh, well, what can you do? And he like pulls out a knife, and then he stabs himself in the leg, and the kids go off screaming. And it's just like, again, just showing how Kennex really is so emotionless. Like, he has like no concept like that would freak the kids out. But I did like that they are trying to show different elements of Kennex in this episode. He's not just like strictly grumpy pants like he was in the first episode. So I like that. And again, the interaction between the two of them was great in this episode. So we have the case of the week, and it's basically these Albanians are kidnapping human women and taking their DNA and injecting them into these androids, these synthetics. And they're creating these sex bots who have an emotional connection to humans and can have sex. And that enhances them because they have the DNA. And, the Albanians are, again, another corrupt organization that is trying to do this illegal business, and the cops are trying to take them down. And, there's a point in the episode where they say, well, these sex bots have reduced like the sex crimes that are going on because obviously they're not taking human females and using them for prostitution and all that kind of stuff. And we're thinking, okay, maybe this is a good thing. But what they're doing is they're stealing these humans for their DNA. So that's not good. And one of the sex bots that they end up grabbing, her name is Vanessa. And she has the human DNA of a woman that's gone missing over 2 months ago. And Dorian and her have some really good interactions. And there's, again, this scene where Kennex is trying to interrogate her. And Dorian is like, listen, you need to use a different approach. You can't ask her, like who controls you. You have to reach out to her at a different level. And Dorian asks her, when were you born? And they start to connect on a different level, and you can tell that she has these emotions just like Dorian does, and he's affected by her just like she's affected by him, but she can't understand really why. And when they start to ask her about this other person that was kidnapped, Dorian explains to her, like, part of the reason why you work as a sex bot is because you can relate and you have this emotional connection and when someone is present, and you also have an emotional connection when they're missing. So that was kind of interesting as well. And it'll be interesting to see further down the road, what they've done with this human DNA and how they use it in other ways, maybe not for sex, but in other ways that they will interpret into these sex bots or these androids. So, the case of the week was interesting. I don't know if it really moved the overall plot of the arc of the story forward, but we did find out in the interactions between Kennex and Dorian that Kennex had not seen the son of his partner who died in the pilot episode. So at the very end, we see the two of them. Kennex goes to the home of his ex-partner and he connects with the young boy, and he basically says, I want to tell you about your father. So it was a kind of a nice scene, again trying to, I think, loosen up Kennex's character and make him warmer and have him connect to another person and somebody that he cared about, who was his partner's son. So I thought that was kind of great. Again, I feel like they're, throwing in the Kennex has a crush on, I believe it's Agent Stahl already, who is played by Minky Kelly. And I'm like, okay, guys, can we, relax on the love interest already? I mean, in last episode, he was all gung-ho and having all these flashbacks about his ex-girlfriend. He finds out that his ex-girlfriend set him up. And then we really get no tie into that in this episode. But all we do get is that he's been lonely for 2 years. So, they're throwing Valerie into the mix as a potential love interest. And I don't know how I feel about that already. But I think that they should do something more with her character as well as the captains, instead of just having them be these women who are throwing out stats and statistics and, barking orders. So they need to round out those characters a little bit more. But what really did work for me in this episode was the relationship between Kennex and Dorian. And obviously that's the central character, and I'm glad that they're getting their banter and they're having some really great conversations. So we have the In Syndicate, which is basically the major, I think, villain that's going to be plaguing this task force for the season. And it'll be nice to see who actually is in control of this whole organization further down the line. But, if the case of the week is going to be, just kind of here and there and not really tied into the overall arc, I don't know how well that's going to work. But, I found that this was a bit of a better episodes than the pilot. Again, they're using their technology, which is really cool. What I thought was interesting was when they went to talk to the young boy of the mother who was kidnapped, they didn't use the technology to wow him. They used like a little giraffe, which kind of touched to the heartstrings of a little kid. And I thought that was great too. So it's not just all about the futuristic stuff. It's also about just the human emotion that we all feel as young people or as adults. So I thought that was great. So overall, pretty good episode. Better for me than the pilot, just because I think it fleshed out a little bit more of the emotional side of the two leads, which was great. So that's been my review for Almost Human. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.